the intention is that if there's no issues expressed by the people in the room today, that on Monday, what we're looking at today is going to go into the live production environment, and that you'll be able to start using Day Manager 2 from Monday morning. Yeah? So just yell out, like if there's any confusion or queries, I mean, we'll be here next week in any case, but if you've got any queries, can we make sure we put them to bed today? So can we start with just, not on the Day Manager so much, but on incremental rostering. So there seems to be a bit of confusion about how that works from a scheduling perspective. So I'll just outline it to you, and then if you can indicate is that the framework causing any issues. So what used to happen was that fortnightly Susie would do a batch production of rosters, and that would produce a fortnight of rosters out to whatever date. So what it appears is you've been relying on knowing the date that she's going to publish the rosters to either create or not create live entries in the live roster. So what happens now is that every night, one day of the roster is published, and it happens automatically, so Susie doesn't produce the rosters anymore. So the date range or the lead time that they've asked us to set is 28 days. Now, if you've got some feedback on that, that's fine. It can be easily adjusted. But as it stands, every night, the master rosters or the live rosters will be created for another day, which is the 28th day from today. Yep, so that means you've always got visibility of 4 weeks worth of rosters, always got 28 days. It never reduces down to a fortnight, and it never gets more than, well, it always stays on 28 days. So does that make sense? Yeah. Now, simultaneously, the threshold that they've asked us to set for competency expiries is 3 days. Now, the reason for this is to stop this thing that you get where, like if Susie published the rosters for a fortnight and added that to the back of an existing week or fortnight that was published, if somebody's driver's licence, for instance, is expiring in the second or in the last week of the fortnight that Susie publishes, or the first week, even worse, it'll actually strip that person off the shifts. I'm not saying driver's licence, but just as an example. So it'll strip that person off the shift for the whole fortnight if it was on the first day of the fortnight. Then, you know, they've got, you might be published out 4 weeks, so that person's actually got 2 weeks where they could come to you and say, oh yeah, I fixed up the driver's licence. So then you've got like a fortnight's worth of rosters that you've got to reassign back to the support worker, and they're all sitting up in unassigned bookings as well, making a mess up there. So, with a 3-day competency lead time set for the incremental rosters, it means that TRACCS won't strip the person off until 3 days before that event takes place. So instead of taking off a fortnight of rosters, it won't take off the rosters at all as long as the person notifies you before 3 days out that the driver's licence or whatever it is has been renewed or HR's reset the competency date. Does that make sense?
Within that, if you have a support worker who has dropped their comps, I had it happen to me, I'm pretty sure that it was like the 17th and 18th vacation happened to be the days it didn't roll right, so I wasn't sure if that was the problem with the incomplete roll or if it was her comp issues. I think it's her comps. I've tried to add new services to her in the equivalent, so the 3rd of March is the equivalent of the 17th for the weeks. I don't think you can add new services in if they are going to potentially have comp issues, can you?
Not past the due date.
Yeah, so it doesn't drop their services, but you also can't treat them as per normal until their comps are repaired. Yeah. So you drop it up in unallocated with a pin.
That's how you pick up that they've got a competency.
Yeah. That's what made me realise it wasn't the incomplete role that led to work.
Okay, so is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Oh, it's annoying.
But you were saying that's how you know that they've...
Yeah, well that's how I picked up that they had a competency. I just checked their file and then I got onto them and said, you need to put your thing there.
Yeah, but see, I just leave that for the HR list. It's been sent out with who's got comps, so I don't need to know because I'm not the one responsible for repairing the comps. But it's not a big deal. I mean, you just drop it in unallocated, pin it and put their name inside the service notes. It's not a huge thing. I just wondered, is that what I found?
You know, that what's happened is exactly correct. But yeah, I'm just trying to work out like whether there's a way. The problem is that you shouldn't really be. If you don't have that, you won't be aware that the competency is expiring until suddenly they turn up in unassigned bookings 3 days out.
Well, yes and no. I mean, HR send a list to the SDTL every month, I think, and tell them what the upcoming comp issues are. So their job is to then make sure that they don't fall out.
So, these guys weren't here yesterday, we had a big whole conversation about competency,
Yes.
remember?
Yeah, that's a conclusion.
So there is a functionality that we don't use, it's always been in the system, that automatically emails the staff member that their competency is ready to expire, so it gives them whatever time frame whatever we decide. So we need to get that functionality turned on. Secondly, we've got 5,000 competencies in there, lots, and HR are currently going through them all to look at the ones that they've got all these time limited things on, and then I'll get to review it, and I'll just slash it.
Actually,
I'll slash it and burn it. So yes, it can be a competency we want to record, but it doesn't have to be done every year. So I teach you how to make scrambled eggs. I don't have to teach you every year how to make scrambled eggs. So we'll apply the time frames appropriately. Driver's license, CPR annually, because it's required for sort of like so we'll do that. So we'll reduce it, and we'll also have it emailed out from the system. That's not going to happen tomorrow. Okay. So, but we do acknowledge there's enormous effort going into just managing this that's unnecessary. So it's something that's high on the agenda.
I suppose what I'm questioning is if their other services don't fall out and therefore they still sit in the roster.
Yeah, I know what
as
you're saying.
normal, why
Yeah.
can't you put a new service in that will then dump in the 3-day limit if it has to?
I'm just trying to work out whether that's going to affect anything else, because, I mean, obviously you shouldn't be doing it for any day where it is expired. So, like, if the competency has expired, you shouldn't be able to roster to that person today. So you're saying if it was the same, if the limit was the same as the lead time on the incremental rostering competency, like the competency lead time, so 3 days, you'd expect that you could roster.
You jump the 3 days and deal with their services that don't fall within the 3 days as per normal. Because what you by default what you're saying is that it's that 3-day period.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think we can do that.
Does that make sense?
But we'd have to make it an option, I think, because there's so many agencies that sort of have their own ways of doing things, and they're locked into the fact that the rosterers can't roster in that period, and they want it that way. But if we made it an option,
All I'm suggesting is if you can touch it once rather than twice, why don't you? So
yeah, no, I get it.
that's my only.
Okay, so we'll put an option in the background to disable that on an agency by agency basis. Well, not disable it, but to allow it, if incremental rostering's running, to set the ban time for 3 days instead of the
Instead
forward.
From that,
Yeah.
Is that, so let me get this right. So you're saying you can't roster them for the 3 days, but then you can after that?
No, what I'm saying is that services fall out within that 3-day period. You can still see all their other services because we now have 28 days of forward rosters at any given time. Whatever I put into the masters in week 1, I may not be able to put into, say, the 17th because that's a Monday of week 1, but I should, because it's not within the 3 days, be able to put it in on the 3rd of March.
Well, it's not, because the 3 days is not really linked to what you're saying.
No.
Like, I mean, we could make that the lead time, but the 3 days is actually about the lead time that you're given so that the shift gets taken off. Like, for instance, we would normally set it at 3 days because if you haven't got people on call looking at the rostering, a shift might get unassigned by the incremental rostering without somebody having visibility of it. So you've got to make sure you've got visibility. So if you do Monday to Friday and say we'll do a 3-day lag, that means that if something's going to get pulled off for the weekend, you'll see it on Friday.
Yeah.
So that's the reason for the 3 days. What you're asking for, I understand what you're asking for and why, but it probably doesn't need to be linked to that lead time because it's not really relevant. You shouldn't be able to, if we follow your logic, you definitely shouldn't be able to put in a service today because it's today and the worker's competency's expired.
Yeah.
But in theory, if you follow your logic through, it shouldn't matter from there, because if you put a shift in tomorrow and the incremental rostering runs tonight, it's going to strip
It's
it off
still
in any
gonna fall
case.
out. That's
Yeah.
right, that's what I'm saying.
So we don't act, if we do that and follow that logic, we don't actually need a lead time at all. Yeah. But what will happen is that like you won't know unless you're on top of it. You won't know that the workers' competency is expired. So you might put a bucket load of shifts in tomorrow and expect them to get done, and the incremental rostering is going to strip them all off tonight because you didn't
Yeah.
know that that workers' competency was expiring or expired.
It's not that important, I just thought I'd flag it, but I would rather see their comps drop 3 days worth of work, so you know that they can't work. That would
Okay.
be far more effective, but I just thought I'd point it out.
No, that's all right. We can do that. Okay. We'll link it to the 3 day lead time or whatever the incremental rostering lead time is, and does everybody understand the implications of that? Yeah. It'll actually make things easier for you, but it means you might get a bit of a surprise.